afternoon, everyone. Glad you're all here. I'm Locke, co-founder, president of the OptiMystics Citizens Action Network. I would like to introduce a special guest here, our other co-founder and president emeritus, decided to join us. Thank you, Ken. It's good to see you here.
Few words.
A few words. I missed you guys. Perfect. Good few words. VIBE, of course, stands for very important business engagement. As always, we deeply appreciate Rain Brews, the good folks here, Stevie, Corey, for allowing us to host these meetings. Thank you all. I'll talk very briefly about the OptiMystics, and of course, we'll hear from our esteemed guest speaker. And I trust I get this right. It's not Andrea.
Just right.
Andrea Oaks-Jaramillo, right?
Yes, Jaramillo, yes.
Jaramillo. Thank you. You're executive director of the Upper Rio Grande Economic Development Group.
Yes.
All right. We're looking forward to hearing from you. And then, of course, after that, we'll draw for door prizes, and then it's Minkle time. The OptiMystics, as you all know, we're the people who organize and host the annual Cinco de Mayo event celebration downtown. We're spearheading the artistic bike rack project around town. We put on the annual beer fest and car show in Chapman Park in the fall, working with the Poor Boy Car Club. Our slogan, connecting people, creating community. We also work with a lot of other nonprofit organizations such as the Mystic Valley Art Council, Monte Vista Emergency Food Bank, the City, the Lore Foundation, SLB Fast Friends, and more. Our aim, of course, is to keep moving the town forward in a positive direction. And we're involved with the RERC Steering Committee, as well as watching for other grant opportunities to help aid in the revitalization of Monte Vista. Our intent, of course, of these meetings, bring business owners, leaders, managers, potential business people all together. We offer a short 15 to 20 minute informational presentation every month and an opportunity for you to ask questions and network with your fellow business people. Our desire is to network, helping connect people, places, and things. And again, we want to continue to further this positive forward momentum that's happening here in Monte Vista. Board, anything to add?
You about got it.
I got it. All right. Without further ado, then, let me present this month's special guest speaker, or it is Executive Director, Andrea. Thank you for coming.
So I just want to tell you a little bit about what Upper Rio Grande Economic Development does. This group has been around for several years at this point and was actually formulated in response to the situation with the village at Wolf Creek. There was kind of a necessity to potentially have a voice about what economic development in the San Luis Valley as a whole looks like, and specifically in the Upper Rio Grande economic development kind of genre and area. So at that time, I was actually on the board because I was with REC and Cielo at that point. And then I was gone for a couple of years. I was in California for about 2 years, just came back, so I've been back a year now at this point. And so I came back and I was with San Luis Valley Development Resource Group. Left them in June of this year, and then took some time off. And then while I was taking time off, then this position was offered to me. So my background is actually marketing and economic development. I'm in process of testing through IEDC for my actual certification for economic development. I've done all my education in that way. And so what I'm hoping really to bring to Upper Rio Grande is we're kind of in a space of reorganizing, if you will, what the organization itself looks like. So in my view at this time, we have a great board, and we're actually looking for some additional board members because I think it looks like we're going to lose probably 2. We did lose our board president recently. So kind of my iteration of the organization at this time is really looking at businesses and kind of what those gaps are that we're missing. So we'll be doing BR&E surveys, which is business protection and expansion. We'll start that in the new year. I was actually hoping to start that in November, but it looks like we're going to be able to collaborate with Alamosa and actually get some really good software that we can share between the two of us and then to some of our other counties as well. I'm huge on collaboration. Even though that I specifically service Upper Rio Grande Economic Development, I very much believe that a rising tide sails all ships, and that is really kind of the attitude that we need to have for the valley as a whole. So the business retention and expansion surveys will really help us identify and create a metric as to what some of those gaps are. Do we need technical assistance? Do we need additional digital literacy? What kind of gaps are we looking at when it looks, like our labor force and our workforce development? We know there's some serious issues there. We also know that as a whole, we have the most aging population that is still actually employed in the entire state of Colorado. So we're really getting to a point of where we need to look at what do we do to either keep people here, attract people to come here, or encourage folks to, get back into the workforce in a way that makes sense. Whether that's different kind of job training or different education that we can help, with people. Those are kind of the things, the conversations that we need to have. My organization specifically, what I'm really focusing on is, as well as the BRNE surveys, is the networking component. How do I find resources for our small businesses and entrepreneurs in terms of grants and lending and kind of all of the different programs that are coming down from OEDA and the state and things like that, and start making those connections? Because you don't know what you don't know. And also there are literally like a million different programs right now in terms of grants and lending and things like that, and it's so much to keep up with that it's really hard for small business owners and entrepreneurs to know what they potentially need as well. So I work in conjunction with First Southwest Community Fund. That is kind of a chapter of First Southwest Bank. They're not the bank themselves, they're a different program. They have some really amazing programs actually when it comes to agriculture, when it comes to women, when it comes to minorities, people of color. I would very much encourage you to potentially have Azrael Madrigal. She's the program director for that. Potentially come speak to the group as well. She's fantastic. I actually just had her up at Rio Grande our last meeting and spoke to the group, and she brought a ton of really good information for folks as well to be able to connect with them. We have Development Resource Group. That's another really fantastic group that has a lot of resources in terms of lending and grants. They focus a little bit more on the grant side of things, but they do have some mini grants. They have a lot of lending resources, and they're valley-wide as well. Same thing with Azrael's group, with First Southwest Community Fund. So it's kind of one of those things that we want to make sure that people are understanding that these resources are out there, and this is how you access them. Upper Rio Grande, ourselves, we do not have like a revolving loan fund situation, but there isn't a necessity for that because we have the ability to put you in contact with the banks and then also people like First Southwest Community Fund and also DRG. So that's kind of what our piece looks like, is really finding out where those gaps are, identifying them, creating a metric to create solutions, and then also the networking component of putting people in the right places, in the right rooms together to have the conversations so that people are in fact getting the resources that they need. We know honestly that like at 70% of business expansion and growth actually comes from what is already available in the area rather than attraction, because attraction is actually very expensive. It's very expensive for the cities to do, it's very expensive for the counties to do. So if we can fortify what we have here already, that's going to give us a stronger basis to then actually look at potentially doing additional expansion. The other problem that we face is that we don't have adequate housing for our area in the entire San Luis Valley, and we don't have adequate workforce either, which is another problem. So all of these things kind of have to be addressed in conjunction with one another so that we can create a more robust economy, for the area as a whole. The other thing that I would speak on today as well, I am also the Community Outreach Manager for the San Luis Valley Broadband Coordination Office. What that is another group that is looking at digital equity for our valley as a whole. We are lucky that we do have two very good providers here, but we also need to know how can we expand that in terms of backhaul capability, in terms of redundancy, kind of those pieces, so that we saw clearly with COVID that there was a massive necessity to have a better outreach and a better footprint in terms of actual connectivity for our kids and things. And so we need to continue on with that conversation. My group really looks at kind of how we can also find you funding. We can find the schools funding. We can create projects that we can get devices into hands of some of our more socioeconomically challenged folks. And also there are a lot of programs out there, like through the ACP, for instance, which do a reduced rate service as long as the provider participates in it. But there's a lot of paperwork that goes along with that. And so what we're doing is looking at how do we do an outreach to make sure that people are getting kind of those resources that they need as well. So that's another huge piece of economic development as well. We have to have a really robust footprint in terms of broadband and connectivity, because that really does help at least put us on an equal playing field when it comes to living in rural Colorado with some of the larger areas. So it's very important. One of the other things that is kind of coming down the pike at this point, we are seeing conversations now in terms of the energy redundancy coming in and out of the valley. In terms of, we only actually have one line currently over Poncha. That is literally the only electricity coming into the valley that we have at this point. So COSA, which is a solar organization, is looking at how could we potentially fortify our grid here for actually being able to expand some solar components and some storage so that we would have better redundancy as well. That's one that I'm kind of just involved with in terms of, this is something that's been kind of a passion of mine since I was with the Rural Electric Cooperative, and I think it's really important that we actually have viable electricity for everyone that lives here and not just, one source. So it's kind of a lot. I know I covered a lot of stuff, but I'm open to questions and what I can help you guys with. Yes.
I was involved in the parish for a few years almost. We never had a conversation that I remember where we discussed the catch-22 situation, where there's not enough places to live, so we don't have workforce.
Yes.
And so this is something new that they're tackling?
I wouldn't say, it's not so much something that's new that we're tackling necessarily, it's just something that's been on my radar for a very long time. And basically any economic development conference you go to, you see that across the state. We don't have low-income housing, we don't have market rate housing, and we don't have like higher housing. We just don't have housing. So the Housing Coalition actually recently, well over probably I think like the last 3 years, did an extremely comprehensive study, also in conjunction with Alamosa. The Housing Coalition, by the way, does service the entire San Luis Valley, and what they do is down payment assistance and also rehab lending. And they're a great resource for lower income. And they, like I said, service the entire San Luis Valley. But again, it's not one of those things a lot of people know about. So they did a super comprehensive study that really went county by county and municipality to show how many homes need to be actually built in these areas to combat the housing situation that we're seeing. I would also love to introduce you guys to Dawn. The study is on their website. It's San Luis Valley Housing Coalition, and there is a whole list per county of the amount of houses. For instance, like Del Norte needs like, I think their last one, the last one that I can remember Dawn talking about was they need like an additional like 50 to 100 houses, just for Del Norte alone. So if you know that's the situation there, then that's what that looks like throughout the entire area. The other problem is, logistically, we have a huge issue getting supplies here. We also don't have enough builders here. So it's this constant cycle of catch-22 of how do we attract builders, how are the builders able to then make their margins and things, like what does that look like? And what does it look like in the different categories of the actual necessity for housing? Because it can't all be lower income, it can't all be market rate, and it can't all be higher margin as well. So there really has to be this conversation of how we create a situation where we're able to attract this, but also build housing in a way that makes sense, that everybody can access and utilize. So Dawn Melgaris is their executive director for the Housing Coalition. She does a great presentation. I would also very much encourage if you guys have the opportunity to potentially have her as a speaker. Happy to do an introduction there, and her information is great in terms of really kind of outlining and defining what that looks like for each of the areas.
Well, you know that Monte Vista has a URA.
Yes.
We're one of the only ones that now have a URA. And are you all working with them at all? Because they have the capabilities of building housing.
They're doing pieces through yes, that one. I know, there's so many acronyms at this point, I'm like, which one is that? So Monte Vista is working with that at this point, I do know for sure. And we do have a new city planner, DJ Enderley, who is great. And so he is working on some additional projects that actually look like, he's been talking to some landowners kind of going out of town about being able to attract potentially some businesses, and then also doing housing that fits kind of all of those boxes that I was talking about. So there is movement here. Like, I'm very excited for Monte Vista because there is definite movement. It's just making sure that we're keeping that momentum, and again, kind of connecting everybody that needs to be connected so the conversations are being had and the collaborations are being made. Because nothing in this valley can be done as a silo. I think for many years, we have unfortunately suffered from the silo effect in many areas. So, I mean, my hope and wish and dream is to really be able to have those conversations with folks and say, you know, what are you doing? Does it make sense to replicate that in our area? Or what are we doing that we could potentially help you replicate in your area? Because again, like, those are the things that need to happen because we don't have the resources, the manpower, or the availability as a valley as a whole to do it separately. There has to be collaboration.
What's the one thing you'd love to accomplish? Say budget is no concern next year.
So the biggest thing for me really that I'm focusing on at this point, and we've been really lucky with the company that we're talking with, it's called Blue Dot. I really do want a very comprehensive BR&E survey software so that I'm literally not having to do all this like manually basically to compile and aggregate all the information so that I can really start creating that metric of like, where are those gaps? Like, what do people need so that we can start formulating solutions to help our business owners and our entrepreneurs out. I know that we had a conversation about potentially an incubator. I'd love to have a further conversation about that because First Southwest Community Fund has an accelerator program that they have literally put, I want to say, like close to 50 individuals through at this point. It's a great program. And then they give them like $2,500 at the end of that. And then there's also additional access to capital, some microloans and things like that. And those are the types of things that we need to see because a lot of our entrepreneurs, we have a lot of like really amazing people with great ideas here. They're not really sure how to get started or get going or have the ability to do some of that. So we need things like incubators and accelerators.
We do have one space left.
Okay.
And we just haven't been aggressive until after. We were just talking about how busy this time of the year is.
It is, I know.
And so soliciting a tenant for that has kind of gone on the, we'll get to that in January.
Yes, and I agree. I was going to say, it's not going to be a January thing.
But if you raise some money in the meantime, I mean, it's not that we
Yeah.
wouldn't rent until then, it's just we're not going to aggressively market it.
And there's money out there for incubators and accelerators. There are actually really good grant programs through USDA. We have great USDA rep here that I have a great connection with, and we just got a new OEdit rep. Her name is Wendy Martinez is her last name, I believe. It's hyphenated as well. I'm trying to think of what her full last name is. But anyway, she just came on board. She's out of Salida. She comes down frequently, though. Amazing as well. OEdit has a ton of really good programs for our small businesses and entrepreneurs as well. But again, it's kind of one of those things like trying to wade through all the information. So that's really kind of a component of what I want to bring to that is if you have questions or you're like, are there grants for this? Is there lending for this at like a good interest rate? Like what does this look like? Holler at me. I'm happy to do that research and try to find programs that fit for our small businesses and entrepreneurs. I feel like that's another big part of what I need to help us do for our area. I'm hoping also to kind of, although South Fork and Crete are not technically, in Rio Grande, kind of, sort of, they feel like they make sense, like they need to be our friends also. So I'm hoping to get them kind of back into the conversation with Upper Rio Grande as well. And we have a fantastic DOLA rep out of Creed, Randy Sneed. She is a great resource as well. So like we have all these really good people that have like a lot of great information. We just need to get them in front of everyone so that they can tell their information. So that's my hope.
I bet that can be a win.
One of the reasons that this group was formed was because we get things done. And I've heard a lot of people come in and talk about things and whatever. And as I said, I was involved in your group for a couple of years, several years actually. I just encourage more of these groups and more of these studies and more whatever to actually do something with them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I will tell you.
Because they don't seem to, they talk about it.
We do a lot of studies and then we don't do anything with the studies. And I have been involved in those type of situations and it makes me crazy too.
I'm not singling you out,
Yeah.
I'm just saying there's a bunch of that.
But I will say that when I was on the board, we actually had Marty and Bonnie Breslin. Those were our original liaisons. And they were amazing and they were fantastic. And then Tom Monaco was before me, so after, in between. And Tom did a lot of really good stuff in terms of trying to add, like trying to connect people with the SBDC, to do business plans, and really kind of reach out, do outreach. And a lot of times there was not a lot of uptake on like his information. And so with one of our new business owners, I reached out to you recently because if there's somebody that's out here that's trying to start a new business, like what can I help with? I mean, I don't necessarily know that I have all the answers by any means, but I can definitely look to see, what we have going on or how I can connect you with some things potentially. And I think that's, another important component of what I can bring to the table as well.
I think Tom ran into that problem when he was running the SBDC too. He had a huge schedule. I'm going to be here, 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 and here.
Yes.
And he had to cut it back because people just weren't showing up.
It does become difficult, and I will tell you that a lot of the content that I tend to push out is a lot of the other EDOs that are doing things, or organizations that are doing lending or like incubator pieces. First Southwest Community Fund has an extremely robust calendar right now, and I have been pushing their content out through our social media and trying to get people engaged with that as well, because they've had like bookkeeping classes, and it's free as well. So I'm just like, if you don't know, like hop on and take some time to do this. I'm working with Jason Medina from SBDC right now. We're trying to get together the pivot program for January. We tried to do it in the fall and just kind of couldn't make it work. And then, unfortunately, Jason was in a terrible car accident, but he's great, so that's good. But the pivot program is with CSU. And what that looks at is trying to make some of our small businesses like aware of how they can potentially pivot in terms of things like our COVID situation that we have. Like how do they stay solvent when we have massive crises like this that none of us expected, because that has been huge for a lot of our small businesses. A lot of people had to close their doors because they just didn't have the resources or the availability to understand how to kind of reformulate to be able to stay open. And we don't want that because it's already hard enough as it is in rural Colorado. So like, what do we do to make sure that we're keeping folks, in business?
He came in and did a business assessment and the pivot recommendation for our business. It made a whole lot of sense.
Awesome.
It really did. So,
Tom is great. Tom is one of my heroes. I enjoyed working with him greatly. So Wendy basically took that position. I took Tom's position with Upper Rio Grande, and then we just kind of had some changeover in terms of SBDC and things like that. So we have a great team. It's just, making sure that it's marketed properly as well. Because, I think a lot of folks don't know that there are the resources of Development Resource Group that lends to the entire valley, or of the Housing Coalition that also services the entire valley. or the SBDC that also services the entire valley. Like, these are not Alamosa-centric organizations. They may be located there, but they literally serve the entire San Luis Valley, all 6 counties.
I think that is a misconception too. Well, they're in Alamosa,
Yes.
they only serve Alamosa now.
Yeah. I'm like, no, call them. I promise, they'll help.
Wonderful. Any other questions? Good. Well,
And
very thank you.
Thank you. I'm
Really
going to leave
appreciate
cards
it.
as well, so if something comes up, like I said, it was a lot of information. So if something pops into your mind later on, happy to assist.
Well, something new we're starting. This is a thank you for you for coming out.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I have one of the other tumblers, and I love them. It's my favorite coffee cup.